Hello and welcome to the Auto Guide Show. There is a new Cherokee. We do a different kind of review for the Toyota Corolla Cross, and there are some weird partnerships starting up. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Okay, so kicking things off, you may notice Kyle's not here. He is off on trips and vacations, so we have Greg joining us once again, and you know what? Works out really well this week because two of our top stories are ones you did. So what better than having the source? First off, let's talk new Cherokees. It's been a while. Not everyone was sold on the last Cherokee. I think they were, dreaming of the old square days. What's this new one all about?
So this new one, I think, is interesting in the fact that it really fits in line with the rest of the Jeep lineup. I was kind of hoping when I went to the reveal that this would be like a throwback to the XJ. That wasn't going to happen. That's just not like how, companies really approach things.
But going to dust off the AMC 4-liter and put it back in the Cherokee? No?
They actually did. So they did this event at the old Viper plant in Detroit, and they had all the old XJs there, and even some of the Cherokees going back to the early 70s. So it was pretty cool. But this is very much like a modern mid-size crossover. So that's kind of the headline. Is the old one was more of compact, depending on how you slice and dice that segment. This one's definitely going at the mid-size segment. It's hybrid, which is it's pretty capable hybrid setup. So I think that they're promising 37 miles per gallon. So that's pretty reasonable. The pricing starts at just under 37, and then it goes up, with the different trims like Overland, Laredo, etc. And then I think obviously you kind of look, it's a Cherokee, so the looks are always very much a big part of what it is. And it's definitely more generic than the old one. The last one I think was polarizing. You probably remember they rolled it out for, it was 2014, and people were like, what are they doing here? And, part of it was because it wasn't an XJ. And this is definitely not an XJ, but it's also probably not as polarizing. I think it just kind of looks like a smaller Grand Cherokee in some ways.
Yeah.
They went for some of the XJ styling cues, but they're very subtle. It looks just like a modern Jeep.
Yeah, like the Grand Cherokee, even the Wagoneers, they all have sort of a familiar look now, which is good because Jeep's always had a bit of identity. So why not lean into it? And it's better than trying to graft the Wrangler face on vehicles. Like remember the Liberty. So it's kind of nice having the two faces. So a couple things. Putting it as a midsize, I think, is great because, like you said, the last one was kind of a compact, but kind of not, and it had a V6. And then the Compass was sort of one size too big to fight the Crosstreks and the Corolla Crosses, but not big enough to fight the Foresters. So maybe the next Compass will grow a size 2, and then you have better aligned products. Having this as a hybrid, I assume it's just naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and electric motors.
So it's actually a 1.6 liter turbo. So it's kind of interesting. They've used this engine in Europe. This is the 3rd generation, but this will be the first application of it in North America. And it's also the first time Jeep has rolled out a non-plug-in hybrid. So, kind of wrap your brains around that for a little bit. So I think they've actually brought a lot of good gear to the midsize fight. I think it's, you look at this, it's a Jeep Cherokee. It does have that kind of Jeep coolness, but the hybrid is compelling. There are frankly plenty of hybrids in the segment, but this one looks promising on the surface. So I think that was a good move too. They did say a Trailhawk, which is definitely more like off-road gear, is that's going to happen. A couple times they stumbled over the word Trackhawk, which I thought was funny. And the Jeep executives were like, don't quote us on that. We're not going to do a Trackhawk, which would be awesome. I don't believe
they did.
I don't think there ever was a Cherokee Trackhawk. That's more of the Grand Cherokee thing. But a Trailhawk is on the way. So I think that's, maybe give them 6 months or a year, whatever the normal cadence is for that. Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about this. Like, I'm with you. I think midsize is the way to go, especially when you look at the pricing in this, like for vehicles like this and the equipment levels. I also think you need to, it is an interesting play in the midsize. Like the old Cherokee, like the last gen was kind of big for compact. This one, you're going into the midsize segment, and I tend to look at the new Forester as like, it's a chief rival, whereas, I mean, look at the midsize segment, like half of them are 3 rows. So the segment has changed a lot in the last 10 years. So I guess, we'll see, because this will be a little bit, it is a 2-row crossover. It will be a little bit on the smaller side compared to things like a Hyundai Palisade or Mazda CX-90, which at least nominally are midsize.
Yeah, it is interesting because even though I said it's better, they've made it bigger. You're right, they've gone so big, it's kind of bordering another class now, because the Forester is, I mean, they're big now, but it's still, I would say, what we used to call the compact, the RAV4, the CRV. So it's like that hybrid Forester seems like the most natural competitor, but if this is slightly bigger, then is this actually going after the Outback? Because now the Outback's an SUV, so maybe Jeep again put it in between, but somewhere else. We'll see. Like you said, I'm optimistic to try it out. I really think the Forester will be cross shop, especially if the Trailhawk, when the Trailhawk shows up to go against the Wilderness. But there's also an Outback Wilderness, so there might be 2 Subarus it's kind of going after. So we'll have to wait and see.
30% more cargo capacity than the old one. So it is bigger, longer wheelbase, 6.4 inches. It's wider, more leg room. So, I mean, to your point, this is bigger in every way. I thought the interior was a little bit of an afterthought too. I got to look at it at the preview event. Not an afterthought like in a bad way, and it's a below par interior, nothing like that. But they also didn't do anything like crazy for it. It reminded me, frankly, a lot of how Subaru approaches interior. It's just back to basics, some Jeep styling cues. They're using like fake leather, sort of with an eye towards sustainability. My guess is there's some cost in there as well, but just a very basic interior. Uconnect, the 5th gen, is going to be there. Pretty good sized driver cluster, which I think is good too. So just normal interior. Sometimes it's like there's not a ton to say. Maybe some of the higher trims or different trims or the Trailhawk will offer something special, but I just thought it was just a very typical Jeep interior.
Yeah, I was just looking up some of the specs. So yeah, it is shorter than the Crown Signias and the Outbacks and the whatnot of the world, but it's bigger than the other ones. So it is. I take it back. It is playing in between again. The hybrid too. It's like more power than most of the hybrids in the Forester RAV4 size. Not the Hyundai Kia ones, but those 2 have always kind of seem to be half a step bigger. So, everyone, it's such a crazy segment. Everyone's trying to find something that's a little different. So I think we'll see more of this down the road.
Yeah, I'm excited to drive it. I really am.
So moving on, we had, speaking of hybrid SUV, the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid in for a week. But it was a little different. I didn't really drive it. Instead, we were doing a consumer review as my family's looking to replace our current family car. So it was my wife that drove it mostly, as we currently have a Crosstrek. So we're looking back in this same segment, which is probably the second hottest segment right now after the one we just talked about. And there's so many choices. So we drove this, and I can't believe how much this is blown up on the site. I guess there's a lot of people that relate to looking for something in this class and what this does, because this is the only hybrid really in its competitive set. It's got a huge advantage there, and the power delivery is quite good because you get the electric motor torque, and power is almost 200 horsepower, which again is at the higher end for this class. And we found that it was very smooth power wise. The ride comfort's pretty good, but they have to save money somewhere to be somewhat price competitive with a hybrid, and that's all saved inside. The interior is pretty plain. It's missing some features you'd find in other vehicles at this price point. Like some have power passenger seats, some even have ventilated seats. This does have a power liftgate, which is somewhat unusual in the segment. But the actual maneuverability was good, but the sightlines and just the drive feel was just never really found like the optimal comfort position, either behind the wheel or just how it operates. And overall, it was just sort of like there. There was nothing terribly good or terribly bad. It was just kind of whatever. But then the big difference was when we finally filled it up at the end of the week. It, for about the same distance driven, took half the fuel our Crosstrek does. So this vehicle makes a ton of sense for someone who has a decent commute that wants this class. You'd save so much money over the month, over the year. But if you're like us and we don't really have much of a commute, we don't drive it much, so we're talking less than 10,000 miles a year, the things we didn't like don't offset the fuel savings. So that's sort of what this vehicle has going for it. It's what you think. It's the only hybrid, and it's got a huge advantage there, but in other places it may not be right up top.
It's interesting looking at the numbers, like 45 city, 38 highway. Those are impressive numbers, but like we've bought cars over the course of our life for more fuel economy. And it's almost like maybe you overcompensate something in the past that really was more of a gas guzzler. But to me, it does be the whole picture. And frankly, that's where things like the Cherokee we were just talking about, where you do get some of that emotional pull. It's got to all work. Just buy like something that is fuel economy. It sounds like maybe your Subaru at least offers a little more like, some more emotion to the drive.
Greg, since you started this part, you're breaking up crazy. I know. I can't even follow what you're saying, so I'm sure people listening wouldn't be able to.
Oh yikes. Okay.
Now you're okay.
Okay. Do you want me to restart or
yeah? And I'll just tell Wyatt to
sorry about that.
To cut that part out. It was really weird. It just comes and goes. It's almost like there's something that's getting near your house that interferes for a minute and then it goes away again.
I don't know. Yikes.
All right, take two.
Okay, take two. What was I saying? 45 miles per gallon is a pretty hefty number. That's one of the headliners, but it's got to be the whole picture, right? The whole deal. And if there's no, it sounds like true emotion for this car, it's a little tough. You want to have, and that's where I think like Jeep, like we were just talking about, and some Mazdas bring that level of, interest to the table. And that can make you think, well, I could trade 2 or 3 miles per gallon in some cases for something that I'm just a little bit more excited to drive.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect thing you brought up. This is like the ultimate rational vehicle in the segment, but no one buys a car on just pure rational. I mean, if we all did, we'd be driving 30 horsepower little square pods that putter us around. People want more. And like I said, Toyota can't offer everything and a hybrid because it's just the development and the cost behind it. Like everyone would be doing it. So they staked out a claim and there's a very appealing position for it, but that's sort of its only position. So the comments we've got so far pretty much confirm, if you a fuel economy above all else and you need something that's still family-ish and has some nice options, this is perfect. But if not, then there's other things out there.
I think in the Toyota family, I would just step up to like a RAV4 or something, or a Crown Signia or something. I think that would probably be my move.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up, because the RAV4 is very similar, I find, against its competitors. It has the features, but it like inside and some of the details are a little off, but it's so good as a hybrid and even better as a plug-in. Whereas I think when you hit Crown Signia, you finally get the full package. But that's because you're at a price point where you can start to offer everything. I love that car. We talked about that on a previous episode. That's such a underrated midsize. But moving on to something a little bit bigger, you drove one of my bigger surprises of the year. I've driven 2 versions, and both times I've been quite impressed.
Yeah, so this is the 2025 QX80, hugely important vehicle in every sense of the word, huge, for Infiniti, redesigned for the first time since, I don't know, Bill Clinton was in office. Like it was getting a little long in the tooth. I really liked it. I think, I'll give you like the cut to the chase, and then we can maybe get into it. I still like things like the Escalade and the Navigator and even some things in like the Range Rover, Mercedes lineups, even if it's not quite apples to oranges with the Germans. I still like them a little bit better, but this is a very credible entry. I think they did a lot to make it, worth your money. Something that if you're looking for something at this price point in this size, that this is now worth a look. I think they've definitely upgraded it, considerably. I tended to like the design a bit, although I didn't love it, but I did like it. I've always thought Infiniti goes for it with design, that kind of really started under like Shiro Nakamura about 10, 15 years ago. And you saw some really great looking Infinitis and Nissans of that time. And the QX, whatever it's called, they've kind of gone through a couple different names with it. I remember at one point it was like the 56. Yeah. It's always been like they haven't toned it back, despite the fact this is a huge vehicle. So, I think they went for it here, and that'll be your first sort of test if you want to buy this. Like, do you like how it looks? And I think for me, it was kind of in between. So I mean, that's kind of how it looks. It's $114,000. I had the autograph trim. That's like the very top. Pretty cool. In my story, I wrote that I listened to a lot of Springsteen last couple of weekends ago, and the 24 speaker Klipsch sound system kind of tripped over it, but you know what I mean. Sounded really good. It's a very roomy interior, as you would expect. Good materials. Everything feels pretty good. Tons of like cup holders, things like that. We went to this like pool party thing, and as you do in summer, you stay in the pool until like sunset. So we're coming back, and dusk is really kind of settling in. All the ambient lighting looked really good in there. So it's a very upscale experience. And the powertrain, this is the big, frankly, one of the headliners. It's a 3.5 liter. It's a V6, 516 pound-feet of torque, which gives you a bit of, get up and go right off of like stoplights and things like that. 450 horsepower. And this replaces the very long-running 5.6 liter V8, which to me, that reminded me almost of like that old, big V8 in the Land Cruiser that Toyota used for years. Same kind of vibe as far as like just lumbering V8s. But this new one gives it a ton of energy. And I think it's a strong product for Infiniti. I think, especially with some of these different trims like the Autograph, cool, very cool. They're doing what they need to do in this segment.
Yeah, I was never sold on the styling of any of them up to this point. And some of them were just really weird. The one that had that sort of, I don't know, it just had a weird front. And this one is my favorite by far. The vehicles you brought up are pretty accurate, because I find this is sitting somewhere between an Escalade and a Range Rover, where the Escalade's that still like workhorse American SUV, but with like every technology under the sun. And not to ruin future episodes too much, but I drove one recently, and I couldn't believe some of the tech and just how over the top it is, and it costs more, but good for Cadillac. They're getting back to what they used to be. When the Escalade first came out, it was, hey, here's a truck, but a truck that has every feature you can find in a BMW or Mercedes. And I think they kind of got away where they kind of went down to sort of where this and the Land Cruiser played. And now they've gone back to a step up. Let's go crazy with that. And I think this vehicle's filled that void really well. We compared it to the Land Cruiser, or the LX 700. We preferred this. It's just, I think, a better vehicle, and we called it then the Japanese Range Rover, and I still think it is. It's got more than one styling cue. It's got screens and layout and technology that mimics it, and I'm sort of like what the Grand Wagoneer did for American cars. Now that I've driven the Escalade, I wanted to compare this to the Grand Wagoneer, but I'm thinking maybe the Escalade. So look for that down the road.
I also like your thought, though, on the Grand Wagoneer, as far as like something that they clearly tried to level up and load all kinds of stuff into it, and then build it as its own sort of luxury brand. I think Infiniti, even now, still is a little bit of a challenger brand. It's like they're not Cadillac. They'll never be Cadillac. No matter how good or bad Cadillac is, you're never going to call this the Infiniti of, coffee mugs. It's going to be the Cadillac of this or that. So it's same with like Mercedes and BMW, things like that. So I think I like where you're going with that. And having driven this thing, that was kind of a vibe I would pick up from this is you're trying to figure out, what does luxury mean to you? And I think Infiniti, frankly, is still trying to figure that out. What, 30
Yeah,
years in?
they were trying to be like Lexus for quite a while with the full line of cars and vehicles, and their SUVs weren't that pretty, but their cars were. And now it's finally translating to the SUVs. And starting with the QX60 and now this, and I think they're on the right path. And they were sort of in between Lexus and Acura, not really sure which way to go. And I still think they're trying to be more luxury than Acura. That's more, a lot of Honda-based high premium vehicles, but they're not fully committing like Lexus where they're going full range. So if they can find that sort of spot where, they're, to your point about the Cadillac and whatnot, they're much like Lincoln, I would say, in the US, where they're luxury but their own thing. So hopefully they continue the role and we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
So speaking of something premium, Chrysler is one of the few companies left that makes a minivan. The Pacifica, it's one of the more expensive, but it's also probably the nicest in the segment. So it's all Chrysler has right now. I know in the US they have a Voyager, I think it is. That's like a stripped out Pacifica. And in Canada, we have the Grand Caravan, exact same thing, just a stripped out version. But basically, you're selling 3 versions of the same van, stripped out, regular, and plug-in hybrid. So they released a concept called the Grizzly Peak concept. And basically, it's an overland version of the van. And I think this is a little over the top, but it makes total sense. I don't know why they don't have one already. Toyota has or had, I don't know if they still do, the Woodland Sienna, where they jacked it up a bit. So this is raised way up. It's over 2 inches all around. It's got almost 8 inches of ground clearance now, and got KO2 all-terrain tires, which might be a little overkill. It's all-wheel drive because it is. It's not any more sophisticated necessarily. And then it's got all the overland lights and fog lights and roof carrier. And they took out the third row seats, which is actually makes a lot of sense because they're stow and go. So with the seat gone too, you now have a huge underfloor storage, and then you have a flat floor to put an air mattress or even just a flat sleeping bag on, because that's what you're overlanding. So it's just a concept. They didn't even mention anywhere any thoughts of building it, but I just have a feeling there's going to be a watered down version of this down the road. It just makes sense.
Do you remember, everything's 10 years ago, whether give or take 10 years, Ralph Gilles, the head of design for Stellantis, then Chrysler, etc. He did I think it might've been a Dodge, but it was one of the vans. And he called it, I forget what he called it, like the dad van or the man van. And it had all this weird performance stuff on it. This feels like the off-road version of that. I kind of love this. This is just if you look at the side pictures in your gallery, the stance is just insane. It's just this van that's lifted with huge wheels. This is hilarious. So I like it. I'm here for it. Honestly, literally, if you can take a Porsche rallying, like a 911 rallying, sure, take a van. It's nominally like a similar SUV silhouette. So yeah, let's do it. This looks cool. You can take more stuff.
And I'd say 3/4 of the parts on here are things that either are or easily will be in the Mopar catalog. It has a built-on awning and the roof rack and the mud flaps and the all-weather cargo mats. So yeah, they didn't touch the mechanics really, except for the suspension lift. So that's why too, I think it'll come. It's just easy to translate. It's just, will this all be Mopar accessories or will there be an actual version? And if there is, it won't have KO2s, but even if it has 1.5 inch raise and some beefier tires, then people can overland in their van. How many sprinters do you see rolling around like that? It's a market that no one's really in. So hopefully they make it.
I agree. It's cool.
Moving on to our last story. There is a bizarre partnership starting where Mercedes is in talks to buy BMW engines for its products. Now, this isn't the first time luxury car companies have swapped engines. Infiniti and Mercedes did, and Aston Martin currently uses them. But BMW and Mercedes, that's one you never thought you'd see. These are it's like Ford and Chevy. They just don't seem like they should be working together, but in the modern automotive industry and climate, it makes sense. You need to spread costs, especially for cars. These would be used in SUVs too, but it's more of a car engine because it's a turbo 4. I mean, speaking Ford and Chevy, they made a 10-speed auto together, so things have changed. So you may see BMWs. I don't know if it'd be the 2-liter or something smaller for the European market, but I mean, Mercedes makes a fantastic 2-liter that makes crazy power, but it's not a mainstream engine. So BMW's engine that's in like their 330s and X3s and whatnot, that's a good engine. So if it ends up in Mercedes, I mean, great.
Yeah, I mean, is like sort of the end user to talking like tech product code guy, like it could be good for consumers, and when you consider like Mercedes and BMW have grown their audiences so much that they're not just like enthusiasts like us that are like, oh, look at this latest engine, look at what they did with this transmission. It's just like, person who, wants a good engine in their Mercedes, and they don't care which factory in Germany it came out of. So, and that's probably, I would say, 2/3 to 3/4 of most customers. You want your luxury car to have a good engine, and you don't necessarily care how they got it that way. Now, there are probably 25%, 30% that are going to be like, no, I remember XYZ engine that was in the BMW, or this Mercedes engine is why I bought this car. They're the ones who are getting up early to watch Formula One, and they will have a problem with it, but they also probably won't get these engines. They'll just buy something higher up the portfolio that is not shared with their arch rival from across Germany.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. It's all about the end user. People get hung up on where things are sourced or what's in it. I mean, the Supra never got a chance because everyone's like BMW. I mean, if you just forgot about that and drove it, it was a great car. Yeah. And Mercedes lent technology to Chrysler with the Crossfire, and I mean the Charger was using a version of the platform forever. So it can work, and I agree. And it's the specific engine too, I think, is part of the reason it may succeed. It's like no one's sitting there pining for this legendary 4-cylinder Mercedes. If Mercedes was supplying V6s to replace the inline 6 of BMW, people would lose it, although Mercedes has inline 6s now too. But or if BMW was replacing the AMG V8s, which Mercedes did themselves and is now backtracking because those are the engines people are attached to. So yeah, I think this isn't going to matter. It'll also have a little Mercedes badge instead of a BMW badge, and that'll be that.
It is a great engine, I'll say that. But I mean, Mercedes has had a history. They sold AMG engines to Aston Martin, of all people. So I mean, I think it's a reasonable approach in this sort of era of kind of weird partnerships and even some consolidation. So I mean, if GM and Ford could share a transmission, to your point about like, the LX platform with the Charger and the 300 from Mercedes, what worked about that was Chrysler took that platform and made it something totally different. So, and that's where I think you avoid the controversy. With this, there is a little bit of overlap. So I think they're walking on, it's not a minefield, but it's a little more treacherous territory. But at the end, 3/4 of their customer base, they'll be fine with it.
Yeah, and we have to see which engines and where it ends up. I mean, if you're talking a C-Class with the Turbo 4 against the 3 Series, the Turbo 4, then okay, that's interesting. But if it's in smaller engine and vehicles that are more European-based and don't necessarily compete head-to-head, whatever. Anyway, so that wraps up our news and reviews for this week on the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. We are going to take a short break, and then Greg and I will be back to talk to our special guest. And then there's no F1 segment this week. It's Columns on vacation, so Greg and I will be back again to wrap things up. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe worst of all, wait hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? That era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and DIYers. Because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs and trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital, so you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle, plates, and paperwork shipped to your door ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling a ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still owe on your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the 5th, still available messages. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups. Buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, and eBay subsidiary. All right, welcome back to the show. We have a special guest today. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Burns. I kind of work as I guess best way to describe it is like an IT fixer for a supplier that has a couple of plants over sort of around North America. So mainly do sort of like electronic ordering, but also, kind of, hey, this 20-year-old machine is finally broken down. We don't know who made it or where the instructions are. Can you please fix it, kind of thing. So that's kind of where I fit in. But yeah, every day is kind of different, but it's definitely entertaining, and it's fun to be kind of back in the industry too. So
sounds like a bunch of appliances in my house and air conditioners and
yeah.
furnaces, and it's never good when you get a repairman and they say, "Oh, I've never seen one of these before. Or, I haven't seen one of these in decades." So
yeah, and we need it fixed, sort of in today or tomorrow kind of thing. Right? It's like, okay, yeah, we'll get on that. But yeah, so
well, thanks for joining us. For those watching, we have another special guest, my dog, because I'm outside doing this podcast, so hopefully everything goes well. So usually we start at the very beginning. So what got you into cars? Were you born into a car family, or is it something you got into yourself?
Pretty much into a car family. Dad always had something sort of interesting around. So he had, sort of like 4 hours around. He had a Renault 8 Super, and he had. When I was a little guy, he had a late Plymouth Duster, but it was sort of a bizarre order. So it had a 4 on the floor, slant 6 kind of thing. So he always had sort of a steady stream of sort of interesting stuff. So he had an MGB, and then eventually he built a MGCD kit car. And so, we'd spend a lot of weekends kind of working on that. Restored a sort of Mark III Spitfire. To out in the garage. So yeah, it was pretty hard to avoid, and his friends all had the same bug. So we sort of had friends around that had some, always had something interesting, and I would talk cars to anybody who would listen back in the day. So even as a little guy, I was very much into it, and my good friend's grandfather owned the local Lincoln Mercury dealership. And then the lady that watched me, her husband, Bill Scott, was a sort of a big figure in the Steel Auto Group early days. So in Canada, they're kind of a big group on the East Coast. So he was, he would give me brochures and like sort of, all kinds of little trinkets and whatever kind of came across his desk, and all the latest on what was coming next year. So he was kind of a big influence too.
I like how your dad seemed to really be into drivers' cars from European drivers' cars, and he even got a Duster that was as close as he could with a 4-speed on the floor. And
exactly.
So it's like the anti-muscle car. It's awesome.
Well, and it had at some point inherited a set of Cordoba seats too, so it was it was quite plush with the rubber floor mats and the leather seats. Oh yeah, for sure.
That's some top level Chrysler Corp stuff there in that era, right?
For sure. Yeah, no, it was definitely a fun car. But yeah,
that's funny. So can you imagine putting like Escalade seats in a Chevy Trax? Because that's pretty much what it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm not sure they kind of swap in that easily anymore, but yeah.
No longer building blocks. All right, so let's fast forward a couple years when you were either in school or done school. What was the first vehicle you got your hands on, or maybe the first one that you cared about?
Well, so sort of we still had the Spitfire when I was learning to drive, so that's kind of where I learned a lot. I was sort of driving around in a little Spitfire, kind of learning manual and stuff like that, and um, we still had the MGTD kit car, so that was that was like usually a good excuse to get that out and drive that around. But yeah, so the first car I ended up like really sort of being mine was Dad's Chevy Celebrity. So he used to take the ferry to work, so I got the Celebrity. But yeah, sort of ended up being a long string of A body GMs for me. But yeah, the Celebrity was kind of fun because it was sort of like a little bit of a sleeper, right? It had the big motor, it had the 4-speed transmission, it had the gauge package, but it was all chromed out. So it was it was kind of well, as fun as 110 horsepower can be. But yeah, eventually swapped that out. Picked up a from one of Dad's friends. They were getting rid of a Cutlass Cruiser wagon, and then, so I bought that for $1. Found a junkyard motor. And then that car, I got that in 1997. I think we finally junked it sometime like 7 or 8 years later. Yeah, so it was that was kind of a, again, a totally gutless wonder, but you and 6 of your closest friends could pile in, and that was always sort of a fun thing. But yeah, sort of later on, sort of ended up with kind of a whole host of things, but sort of the one that I've had the longest is probably I've had NA Miata for 20 years now. Sort of bought it on a whim because one car was kind of on its way out, and yeah, it's kind of become sort of the family pet. So it's been kind of trucking along for 20 years, but it's sort of I've sort of taken it everywhere. So it's been to, I don't know, 25 states or probably more than that. So driven it coast to coast a couple of times. So that's it's a pretty good Grand Tour, all things considered. But yeah, it's probably not the best choice if you have lots of stuff to take, but it definitely is a fun trip.
Yeah, as someone who's driven not an NA, I owned an NA, but I've driven an NC from Toronto to the Panhandle and then right across the country as well.
Yeah.
That soft suspension actually isn't bad. The biggest problem I found was how high the engine revs in some of the 80-mile-an-hour states and the tiny fuel tank.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, although sort of, yeah, the NC at least you have the 6th, right? But yeah, I mean, even in 5th, yeah, it's not exhausting, but you definitely wish there was that extra gear. Although I think the 5-speed in the Miata is definitely the superior to the 6-speed, just in terms of like feel and things like that, right? So I don't know. If people haven't tried an NA, I kind of recommend it. It's just one of those cars that you should like always try out if you get a chance. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So stepping back to some of your older cars. So this is Cutlass wagon. Was that the 2.8 in that? Or
yeah, it was. Yeah, and it drove itself to the junkyard with it went to inspection, and the guy was like, if I don't touch that, it it won't go right through. And so yeah, so it kind of got silenced by the salt out east, sort of vicious in a way that sort of, yeah. My aunt she had started buying Toyotas in the 70s, but they would send engineers out from Japan to come study how the car is rusted in Prince Edward Island. And so she would they would come over and they would borrow the car for a few days, and they give her a loaner, and they kind of go and like take a look at all the bodywork, and it would come back all cleaned up. But yeah, they would send it back to Japan to see how bad it had rusted. But, yeah,
I think that was the scam. Of all the places they'd go, like PEI is not an easy place to get to, or like a super.
Yeah, I think there might have been an Anna Green Gables factor there or something, back when that was popular. But
just wanted a vacation somewhere.
Exactly.
Well, when I was a kid, we had a 6000 LE wagon, so your corporate sibling, and we drove that all the way across the country too, to Victoria and back. And Burgundy on Burgundy, it was a great car. But the cars you grew up driving, I mean, they're not as good maybe as my 94 Cavalier 3-speed, but
no, yeah,
they're pretty decent.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody had a Cavalier back then, right? Like it was sort of like issued, right? Like I mean, it was the most popular car in Canada for I don't know how long, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, they were indestructible. I mean, they weren't exactly there was no sporting pretense, right? But unless you got to the sort of Z24 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, everybody had one. Everybody knew somebody who had one. You rode around in one. But yeah, they were sort of one of those cars that just lasted forever for no apparent good reason.
Yeah, it's one of those cars where it was terrible when you got it, but it never got worse. It was like just always at the same level.
Yeah, it would just kind of get you there. But
yeah, well, we had the 94, so we still had the push rod 2.2 liter in that thing, and I mean you forget to do an oil change for like a year, and it doesn't care. It just keeps going.
Well,
the worst part was trying to climb a hill though with 4 people in the car because it did not. The 3-speed and the 110 horsepower weren't a good combo.
Yeah, I mean, we had I found a car for Dad one time, and it was a little old lady owned 96 Regal, but it was like the first year of the Series 2 3800, and yeah, we definitely. I definitely had some fun in that car. I'm not sure Mom and Dad know how much fun I had in that car, but sort of coming from 110 horsepower to sort of a 3800 Series 2 was like, yeah, it was just this was something exciting, right? So yeah, it's a pretty fun little car.
Kids today won't realize when you got a big car with 205 horsepower how fast.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
To everything else.
Man, now it's like everything's like 300 plus, and I'm like, man, I remember how much trouble we got ourselves into with 80 to 100, and I'm like, with a new driver in the house, this is kind of a concern, right? But it's a long way from those sort of days in the the carved V6 where it's kind of wheezing along.
I remember I had a Chevy Lumina, a 1993 Euro Sport or something, and that felt like such a exotic handling thing back in the day, and it was secondhand, but I mean, it also speaks just how good cars are right now.
Yeah, it's incredible. You look at if you manage to hop behind the wheel of a car that's 30 years older, it's light years away. It's incredible how much progress there's been, right? And it's I remember with the Carb 2.8, it's like I had a screwdriver in the glove box in case the auto choke didn't come off, right? Like you would have to pull over and pop the hood and kind of rip the air cleaner off and jam a screwdriver down there to get the butterflies to open up, and then put it all back together and then hop back and get back into traffic. And it's like you don't have to do that anymore.
That was a Canadian rite of passage. My dad, who's not into cars at all, screwdriver in our 6000 LE, and I vividly remember even at 6-7 years old being at the corner store and having to pop the hood and shove it in there to get it started again so we could get home. And
eventually I got smart and just put a manual conversion on it. But yeah, it was always hoping it wouldn't warm up until you got to where you were going, and then you could just do it afterwards. But yeah, inevitably would die mid intersection, and you kind of have to coast through, and that was it. But
it's funny you mentioned the difference in cars and how much they've come, because I don't know, maybe it's just because of our age, but I always feel like anything in the 2000s, I didn't feel like we're that much different than today. Like they'd made all their big changes 80s, 90s, except for screens. That's the big difference.
Yeah.
But then I've been in a couple cars from 03 and 04 recently, and I was like, oh no, these do drive completely differently. It's not just the screen, it's the brakes, it's the suspension, it's the interior as a whole. So
the interiors, I think from that era to now, the interiors have really just come leaps and bounds, right? I mean, you kind of had that lull in the 90s and 2000s where, I mean, the seats were probably nice, but the rest of the car was this sort of flimsy, cheap plastic, vinyl kind of that didn't hold up all that well. GM interiors were just awful for that sort of a 10-year period. And now, you wouldn't, they wouldn't feel out of place in a luxury car of, 30, 40 years ago, even in a sort of mainstream car.
Yeah, Greg won't like this, but the mid 2000s and early 2000s Chryslers and Dodges, I noticed that too. I remember getting in a Caliber and being like, holy cow, is this bad? Even back then. And I mean, even the Charger, the original Chargers like Greg has, their interiors had a lot of plastic in them for what you're getting. But that was all in the engine and chassis, so that was fine. But man, those Calibers and that CVT,
They were awful. I got one as a rental, and they were just it was just like, what did I do to deserve this? You know, like to the rental car guy, right? It was just like it was so mediocre, and it was I think it was worse because you kind of had seen, like, you know, like the Stratus and the Breeze and stuff like that. They weren't great cars, but they were nice places to be in. And you know, sort of that change in like the interior from sort of a 90s Chrysler to like that was just like, what are you even doing here, people?
I won't defend the Caliber because I was in one and it like an SRT4 and it like literally overheated in the basement of the magazine I worked for at the time. The Charger holds up a little better, you know. I just have a little biased, but yeah. I mean, the materials, you know, 20-year-old materials, just it's a different time, you know. And I think if you look, I would almost draw the line around like 2010 is when interiors like really tipped over into the modern era. Like get in like a Fusion from like 08 or 09, and you're like, whoa, you know. But even a few years later, they were much better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing I miss is the velour, right? Like you don't get those
totally
cloth interiors anymore, but
you don't get the all purple velour interior with velour dash.
Oh yeah, and it's super plush and nice, and it's like that kind of that heavy wearing cloth, and it's like I generally prefer a cloth seat, but some days I'm like, maybe not. But I mean, like.
Sorry, I was gonna say I blame the Caliber single-handedly for America's hate of CVTs, because I think that was a lot of people's first taste, and then they were like, "I'll never want one of these again." Like I remember it was the first time I drove one, and I put it in drive, and I was like, "Why am I not moving?" Oh, now I'm moving. Like it was just such not a good transmission. And, I mean, and to your point about what it came from, like it came from the Neon. Like the Neon was its predecessor, and that inside wasn't great, but it was such a fun, economical, practical car, and then it kind of turned into the Caliber. Like I love driving Neons; they were great.
Yeah, no, well, you know, the other thing was like it was stupid little touches, right? Like it was like, you know, you had the glow in the dark key, right, on some of the early ones, right? Like, you know, it was a fun, stupid, cheap car, and you know, it wasn't that bad to drive, and I don't know whether we I don't even know what the equivalent would be these days. You know, maybe you're like a Trax or something. I don't know. I mean, I would.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to Dodge, and I've said this for a while, they were just way too far ahead of their time. Like they were like, our small car is going to be a crossover now, and everyone's like, this is dumb. Whereas today, it's what everyone's doing. So
they would have been genius, right?
Yeah, they're just way ahead of the curve, and everyone has a CVT. It was just they were like 20 years too early. But
I mean, it was sort of a wacky package. I mean, and then you had the Charger, which was like basically a harkening back to the old days. And you know, I mean, I have one too, and I love it because it's sort of one of those. It's like a time warp car, but it's still modern. Where you know you still have the rear wheel drive, and you still have, you know, sort of big power, and you know, it's sort of reminiscent of a time and a place, right? But still kind of, you know, not as likely to leave you by the side of the road. But yeah, it was sort of that weird mix of like, okay, yeah, you're way ahead of the curve on some things, and like just, you know, okay, and then the other hand, we're pushing the muscle car look here again too. But I mean, it was genius. They sold a pile of them, so
they knew their
not so much Caliber, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the Charger, when it first came out too, like the early ones, they were mind blowing because I mean, a big American rear wheel drive car was the recently deceased Impala or the Crown Vic, and those were like. Felt like 80s cars inside with the way the switchgear and the design and just the bulbous size of them. So that all of a sudden you had this sort of blocky, lean V8 powered Charger. It was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge comparison. Like dad had a like a Panther. He had a Crown Vic at the time that I got my Charger, right? And it's, you know, sort of driving them back to back. It's a world of difference. But I you know, it's kind of, Panther is kind of another car that I'm like, everybody should drive one at least once, but I kind of feel bad that people don't have like a new one, right? Like, you know, when they were new, you kind of walked up to them in the rental car lot and you're like, yeah, it's sort of like a floaty ride that was just kind of like, it just doesn't exist today. You know, they were great cruisers, right? You know, blowing through the Midwest, and one of those is like, you know, sort of quite an experience in itself.
What about a Mercury Marauder? You know,
there's. I mean, so like it was funny. I was out driving. I don't know. It's probably a year or two ago, but it was like, the silver-haired lady in a Marauder, right? Like it's sort of like one of those cars. It's like, yeah, it's definitely a geezer car, but the Marauder is cool. Yeah, it was fun to see them around still. Because I think it was sort of a good farewell to that car. I mean, I don't know how long they built them for. It was probably 23, 24 years they were building. 77 to 2010 or something like that. I don't know. Anyways,
they kept it on for a very long time. Yeah, that was until Mercury went bye-bye. I mean, they kept that thing, and then the Crown Vic lived on for taxis and police cars until.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, body on frame is perfect for like fleet use, right? You crack it up. Okay, well, it's a fender, right? It's not the end of the world. If you're gonna live a hard life as a taxi or a police car, it kind of makes total sense.
It was before I get onto the Marauder for a sec. The equivalent modern day car that I have driven, and Greg's driven one recently, so see if he agrees. That feels like that traditional floaty old school. Not Rendezvous. That's the old one. The Enclave. It just feels like you're completely disconnected from the road, but like positively, like not because it's like this mess to drive. It's like you just feel like you're in this big couch that you could just get on the interstate and go for days. Like it's just so isolating and comfy.
Yeah, I mean, well, you bring up the Rendezvous, which was absolutely a terrible vehicle. I don't know why people give Aztec such a hard time when the comparable Rendezvous was like even worse than the Aztec, and like every way that mattered.
It had a cool gauge cluster, though.
That's true. It did. Yeah. To drive.
So the Marauder is funny because I classify it with the Impala SS, like the last rear drive one, and like at the time they were so cool, but now it's like 255 horsepower. Or I think the Marauder was like 302, which is like you said, like a family sedan has that. And these giant, heavy rear drive V8s, like that was performance, but times changed.
Yeah, I mean, well, like a V6 Charger would probably outrun both of them now, right? Without any trouble at all. I think there's still that cool factor. It's like, hey, it was trying something different, and I think that's kind of one thing that we don't see a lot of right now is like a lot of the sort of special editions or just kind of like limited run of hey, we're gonna let the guys go, or the guys and gals go wild here and do something fun. You don't see that too much anymore, which is kind of unfortunate.
It felt like with those two sort of like separated at birth, muscle sedans, like they really were going for that muscle car era, even though the numbers weren't totally there. The Impala actually was 260 horsepower and had the Corvette motor. Yeah. So it was fairly legit, but they were like 20 years after their time, in some ways. And I think we all love them for that.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's one of those things that it's, they were, there's that Darth Vader, your car is here article in Car and Driver, right? It was just like, oh yeah, this is something sort of crazy and wild and weird. And you sort of poured over the magazines at the time, and it probably means more to us that we're kind of through that era than it does to anybody, kid today. We'd be like, oh, well, it only has 260 horsepower. But, for us, it's like, I think it's so cool.
It was like 10 years too late, I think, even if that was in the 80s, it'd been great. But I remember when it was out in like 96, 97, it's like, well, Pontiac has a 240 horsepower Grand Prix over there that weighs 1,000 pounds less. So I know it's front drive, but it was, but the coolness factor of the look was awesome.
Yeah.
And then Dodge came along and said, hey, we're going to put, a big V8 in our Charger and make 400 plus horsepower. So then that was sort of the real muscle sedan came back.
I mean, that's, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I believe the first one was the Magnum too. If you want to talk about a niche case, that was something else.
I mean, it's like, why a big American wagon, right? But I think, I kind of wonder if what killed that was not having the third seat, right? You kind of had the big American wagon, but it was like still a 5-seater, and it was like, okay, you're kind of close, but does it make sense? Versus, sort of the big wagons we're used to. But
everyone was SUV crazy by then too. I don't even know if you could put a third seat in the Magnum. It was
that roof line was so low, right? But and you kind of have that the Charger doesn't have a super deep trunk to start with, so it would be a little bit tricky. But it was definitely a cool car. It was just,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know whether it was like, okay, you know, the man with a family is going to cross shop that with a town and country. I think that may have been a bit of a miscalc there.
Yeah, they had a small group that wanted to buy them, and they all bought one, and then just like a lot of cars. Now what do you do?
Yeah.
There's so many cars that are like that, Cybertruck, ID Buzz, like
Yeah.
people go nuts over them, but then once the people who actually are going to buy one, you're not sustaining it. So
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, it was, but I mean, I'm glad they tried, right? It was neat to
Exactly.
see. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, there was just an era back in those 2000s. Seemed with the American manufacturers where they were trying anything because sales weren't good. So for some reason, there was a performance era where everything performed. Remember, Chevy had SSs on everything. Malibu
Oh,
Max
yeah.
SS, Equinox SS.
I mean, I will defend that era of Malibu a little bit because it was such a, like, if you had driven the previous gen of you know, the first sort of like new Malibu, like 97, 98 ones, they were so awful, and like the brakes were terrible, and the seats were like awful. It was just miserable on every quantitative like measure that you could possibly get at, and every qualitative measure too. And then you kind of got in like, you know, one of the 04 or later ones, and it was such a step change. And nowadays, I mean, you look at like a Malibu is like, yeah, if you need an car, like the Malibu, like an external Malibu is like a pretty good option. I mean, there's a lot there to be.
Greg had to go.
Oh.
Yeah, I know he had to drop off for a call.
Very good.
It's funny about that Malibu you're talking about, because I had an Alero, and it was crazy that platform mates could be so different. Now I know like mine was sort of the next gen after the previous Malibu, but the problem for GM at that time was they made good vehicles, but their styling was still not great. Like that Malibu
and the interiors
looked great,
miserable.
but it drove good. I mean, in that platform in that era, I remember in that car I still wish I had a chance to drive is, remember there's the G6 coupe, maybe sedan too, and you get the 3.9. They bored out the 3.8 and a manual. You get a 6-speed manual, 3.9 push rod, front drive G6 in like 2005 or something, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I had one for a couple weeks as a rental, and the G6, it was a very underrated car. You know, I mean, obviously it's like sharing the platform with, I think it was the Saab 9.3 at the time. And, you know, even in rental auto spec with the V6, I mean, it was no slouch at all. I think Pontiac was kind of poisoned by then. Because they were making great cars, and it just was not hitting home at all. It's kind of sad to see. I mean, you look at that, and the G8. I mean, it's obviously like fantastic drivers' cars, and they just didn't move at all for some reason.
Yeah, when that G6 first came out with the, remember Saturn Aura? Its twin, and I can't remember the initial engines, but they're okay. But then when they gave it the dual overhead cam 3.6, and the 3.9 was the performance one with the manual, even though it made less power, like, it became quite the performer. But like you said, I think Pontiac had a year or two left after that. And then
I mean, Saturn was another tragedy too. And you sort of have that situation where it's like, it's they kind of had the world by the tail, and then all of a sudden it just didn't
know where to go.
It was too bad, because I mean they were good little rigs, but it was sort of it was a hard and fast fall.
Well, it's just GM at the time. I mean, like, it's no surprise to people who watch or listen to the show that I'm an Oldsmobile fan, and in the
same here,
late 90s, early 2000s, they were probably making the best products out of GM, and whole packages. They looked great, the interiors weren't terrible, they drove nice, but by then, like, that name was so dead. Like, it died in the 80s, so it was too little too late. But the Aurora, the Intrigue, the Alero, like, they're all good looking vehicles. But
I mean, I think they kind of missed a trick with the Intrigue by not calling it a Cutlass Supreme. You know, I think it was too much change too quickly, and you kind of had the buyers getting lost on where to go, right? It's sort of one of those situations where it's like, you have somebody that's trading in their Cutlass Supreme. It's like, well, we have this Intrigue, and it's like, well, where's the Cutlass, right? Like, you know, sort of, you had a nameplate that was kind of around for 30 plus years at that point, and then all of a sudden you're like, let's just switch that off.
They were trying too hard to get rid of their old customer base, and I mean, Dodge just kind of almost did that with the electric Charger, and they've quickly remedied that. But
Yeah.
part of the problem too at the time was I worked at a Chevrolet Oldsmobile dealer in university, and you'd have a row of Aleros and Intrigues, and I had trouble sometimes at first glance telling them apart. So I could imagine a consumer wouldn't, they wouldn't realize like this is a big mid-size, nice premium sedan versus sort of a intermediate or whatever you call the Alero. So that they were almost too identical. But I guess Oldsmobile was trying to be like the Germans and have a family look across the fleet. But
yeah, I mean it was just like I don't know. I mean I kind of wonder nowadays about whether it was the right call to kill Oldsmobile. It's sort of one of those things. It's like nowadays, it kind of like in retrospect, it looks like Buick might have been the one that should have gotten the axe versus Oldsmobile. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about what might have been if they had kicked around a little bit longer, because I think the product mix was amazing. I mean, even the Alero is like a nice little car. Just sort of nobody was thinking in that direction, or just got overwhelmed by people just buying Cavaliers.
Yeah. I mean, if Buick wasn't selling so well overseas, I wonder which one would have survived. But oh well, maybe they'll bring back like a special Chevy or Buick one day that'll be called a Pontiac.
They've kind of been teasing that Pontiac thing every once in a while, right? Now I think for an EV, Pontiac makes perfect sense, but we'll see if it ever transpires.
Performance EV, yeah, that'd be cool. Actually, a little performance EV, like a coupe over raised car, sort of unknown in between, and just give it like 700 horsepower and
or even give it just a bunch of red gauges and a cool interior and like some cladding down the side or whatever, right? But it's something for us that appreciate Pontiac.
Call it some cladding and call it wide track.
Exactly right. Yeah.
You'll get us lining up for it. Well, I need to let you go. Our episode's going on, but it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been great to talk to you guys.
Maybe next time we have you on, we'll start bumping up our eras. We covered the 90s and early 2000s, so now we'll move into
for sure. Yeah, we'll talk more about later on or more recent. Yeah. But anyways, thanks again. Have a good one there.
All right, thank you. See you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so that just about wraps things up on the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. We'll take a quick look at what we've been up to this week and what's next. So for me, I was away for half the week in Denver. I was driving the highly, highly updated Subaru Solterra. It was actually a discussion we had quite a bit on the trip as to why this is just a refresh. I know it's only 3 years down the road, but why didn't Subaru just say it's a new generation? I mean, even the structure is changed a bit. They have increased safety. So it's rare that a vehicle gets 57% more horsepower, 25% more range, a new look inside and out, new tech, a revised structure. And it's like, this is just a refresh. So when this airs, my review will have just gone live, but I'll save my thoughts on it for next week. And then now that I'm back home, I'm actually driving nothing this week because I got lots to catch up on. Next week, I will have a CX50 to do a full camping review. And I'm going on a trip to Tennessee to drive some cars and to watch Indy race. So I'll have lots to talk about when I'm back. What have you been up to, Greg?
Well, you have an awesome week ahead, it sounds like, for sure. Good way to end summer here. So next week, I am going to drive the new Ram V8, that's out at the Chrysler Stellantis Chelsea Proving Grounds. That probably won't make the next show just due to the embargo situation, but I can't wait to tell everybody what that's all about. A couple things I do have coming up. I spent a week in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the Honda Passport Trail Sport, which really interesting. I can't wait to kind of dive into that, what that was like. It definitely feeds into that like off-road kind of adjacent-ish vehicle. You take a family hauler and make it more off-roady. And then I have a 4Runner review coming up that I imagine we'll get live next week. So talk more about the 4Runner. Who doesn't like that? That's very authentic. So
it's a lot of off-roadness that you have coming up. The Ram, I can't wait to hear your thoughts because I mean I've driven many Rams and many V8s and I love them, but it's just funny that it's now it's the entry level engine in terms of power. Maybe not in terms of price, but it'll be interesting to see where its place is. It'll be a huge seller because I think Ram of all truck brands, maybe Chevy a close second, they want a V8. So yeah, I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I think it will be very similar to the old one, but maybe they've changed things.
It will be interesting. And I did just drive the Hurricane 6 in the Ram. So I'm going into it with an open mind. I really am. Like, which one's better? I don't know. Yeah, the high
Hurricane?
output 3 liter. It was a party.
I think, I mean, that's like the special engine, but I think the low output and the V8 now low output is going to have more power and torque. But I think I'd love to get 2 trucks with those 2 at the same time and really see the difference. I did that years ago with a Mustang V6 and a Mustang EcoBoost. Ooh. And it's crazy how much the character is different. And I totally saw the appeal for both depending on the consumer. So anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. We haven't even driven it yet, but we will discuss that probably in 2 weeks' time. Next week, as I said, I will be away. So Greg, I believe you'll be here with Kyle, and then I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, that's it for another episode, and we'll be back next week, and I personally will be back in 2 weeks. eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. Ever try to buy your car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on blind trust? That era is over. Now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary.